the little hand wrapped around my fingers just before I walked down the aisle. I almost pulled away, not because my grandson Noah was bothering me. He was 3 years old, wearing a tiny navy suit that his mother had spent weeks choosing. His hair had been combed neatly, although one stubborn curl had already fallen across his forehead. He looked up at me with eyes far too serious for a child his age. "Grandpa," he whispered. I bent down and straightened his little bow tie. "What is it, buddy?" He glanced toward the church doors, then toward the woman standing beside my son. Then he leaned close enough that his breath touched my ear. "She hurts Mommy when you go away." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Behind me, the organ was playing softly. Guests were settling into their seats. My son Daniel was waiting at the front of the church, and beside him stood his future wife, Claire, the woman I had spent the last 8 months learning to trust. I looked at Noah again. "What did you say?" His small fingers tightened around mine. "She hurts Mommy," he repeated, "but Mommy says not to tell." Then he reached into the pocket of his little suit jacket. What he pulled out made me forget the wedding entirely. It was a small silver key. I stared at it. "Where did you get that?" Noah looked toward Claire again. "She doesn't know I have it." That was the moment I realized the wedding I had been preparing for might not be the wedding I thought it was. 8 months earlier, I had been living a very different life. My wife Margaret had passed away 2 years before. Losing her had changed the sound of my house. Rooms that once felt full suddenly seemed enormous. Our son Daniel was my only child. He had always been a good boy, though I use that phrase carefully because Daniel was 41 years old and had made enough mistakes to fill several lifetimes. His marriage to his first wife Emma had ended badly. They had been together for 11 years. Their divorce was ugly, but neither of them wanted to turn Noah into a weapon. Daniel got shared custody, and Emma remained deeply involved in their son's life. I respected her for that. What I didn't know was how much she had been hiding. Claire entered Daniel's life almost a year after the divorce. At first, I liked her. She was polished without being arrogant. She remembered birthdays. She brought flowers when she visited. She called me Dad even though I had never asked her to. Most importantly, she seemed to make Daniel happy. But there were small things I ignored because I didn't want to become the suspicious father who hated his son's new girlfriend simply because she wasn't the woman he had married. Claire never spoke badly about Emma directly. Instead, she asked innocent questions. "Does Emma always call this late? Does Daniel still pay for everything at her house? Do you think Noah is happier with us?" They sounded harmless. At the time, I thought she was insecure. Then Daniel told me he was going to marry her. I was happy for him. At least I thought I was. A few weeks before the wedding, Daniel asked me to help with the arrangements. One evening, while we were sitting in my kitchen, he told me something that bothered me. "Dad, Claire thinks Emma is trying to get more money from me." I looked at him. "Is she?" He shrugged. "I don't know." That answer stayed with me. "You should know before you accuse her." Daniel looked down at his coffee. "I just want peace." I understood that. He had spent years fighting, so I promised him I wouldn't interfere. That promise almost became my biggest mistake. 2 weeks before the wedding, Emma stopped bringing Noah to our Sunday lunch. I called her. She didn't answer. I called again. Still nothing. Then Daniel told me Emma was being difficult. I asked what happened. He said she had become angry about the wedding. I didn't believe him, but I didn't push. Then, 3 days later, Emma showed up at my house. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red. "Can I talk to you?" I let her inside. She sat at the kitchen table and stared at her hands. "I'm not trying to ruin Daniel's wedding. I know." She swallowed. "Then please believe me when I say something is wrong." Before I could ask what, my phone rang. It was Daniel. Emma immediately stood. "I shouldn't have come." "Wait." But she was already walking toward the door. Daniel's voice came through the phone. "Dad, is Emma there?" I looked at Emma. She looked terrified. "No," I lied. There was silence. Then Daniel said quietly, "Good." He hung up. I turned toward Emma. "Why did you look afraid?" She shook her head. "I can't explain everything yet." "Why not?" "Because if I'm wrong, I'll destroy your son's marriage. And if you're right," she looked at me, "then you're about to let your son marry someone who has been hurting people for months." I wanted to believe her, but I needed proof. That same night, I noticed something strange. The silver key. It was sitting on my kitchen counter. I didn't remember seeing it before. I picked it up and noticed a tiny number engraved on it. 17. I had no idea what it opened. The next morning, I received a message from an unknown number. It contained one sentence. Ask Daniel why Claire has a key to the old storage unit. I stared at the screen for nearly a minute. The old storage unit. That place had belonged to Margaret. After she died, I had stored boxes of family documents there. Tax records, photographs, jewelry, old letters. I hadn't visited it in more than a year. I drove there that afternoon. Unit 17 was locked. The silver key fit perfectly. Inside were dusty boxes and old furniture. Nothing looked disturbed. Then I noticed one box sitting open. It contained photographs, family photographs. But several were missing. I searched through the remaining pictures and found something I hadn't seen in years. A photograph of Daniel and Emma on their wedding day. On the back, Margaret had written, "They love each other. I hope they remember that when life becomes difficult." I sat on the floor holding that photograph. For the first time, I wondered if the marriage had really failed because Daniel and Emma had fallen out of love, or if someone had spent years pushing them apart. I found the answer that night. Not completely, but enough. Inside another box was a bank statement. Money had been transferred from Daniel's business account into an account I didn't recognize. The transfers had started months before his divorce, and they were still happening. I called Daniel. He answered immediately. "Dad, who is Lauren?" Silence. That was all I needed. He finally said, "Where did you get that name?" "From your financial records." He cursed softly. Then he said something that made my stomach tighten. "Dad, please don't open that door." "What door?" "The one that leads into my past." I told him Emma had come to see me. He went silent again. Then he said, "Claire knows about Lauren." I froze. "Who is Lauren?" "My business partner's sister." "That doesn't explain anything." "No," Daniel whispered, "it doesn't." The wedding day arrived before I could get the truth, and now I was standing outside the church with Noah holding my hand and telling me Claire hurt his mother. I looked at the key again. "Where did you see Mommy get hurt?" Noah pointed toward the church hallway. "In the little room." "What little room?" "The one with the boxes." My blood ran cold. The church had a small storage room behind the fellowship hall. I took Noah by the hand. "We're going to find your mother." We walked down the hallway. Then I heard voices, Claire's voice, and Emma's. "You promised you wouldn't tell him," Emma answered. "I promised I wouldn't tell him unless you threaten my son again." I stopped. Noah looked up at me. I opened the door. Claire turned. Her face changed instantly. Emma stood against the wall, holding her wrist. There was a red mark across her skin. I looked at Claire. "What happened?" She didn't answer. Daniel appeared behind me. "Dad?" I turned toward him. "You're going to listen now." Claire began crying, but I didn't move. Emma finally spoke. "Claire didn't cause Daniel's divorce." Daniel looked at her. Emma continued. "She caused him to believe I was cheating." Daniel's face went pale. "That isn't true. I never cheated on you," Emma said. "I know that now." I looked at Daniel. "How?" He pulled a folded envelope from his jacket. "Because I found the original messages," Claire whispered. "Daniel." He turned toward her. "You told me Emma was meeting another man." "I thought she was." "You edited the messages." Claire's face collapsed. The room became silent. Then she looked at me. "You don't understand." "Then explain." She wiped her tears. "My father lost his business because of Daniel's family." Daniel stared at her. "What?" Claire looked at him. "Your father didn't know. My father blamed your company for everything. He spent years telling me your family had ruined us." I realized then that Claire hadn't entered Daniel's life by accident. She had come carrying anger that wasn't entirely her own. But there was more. She had manipulated Emma. She had threatened her. She had taken money from Daniel's accounts. And she had used Noah's fear to keep everyone silent. Daniel looked at his son. Noah ran to him. "Daddy." Daniel dropped to his knees. He held Noah so tightly that the little boy's face disappeared against his shoulder. Then Daniel began to cry. I had seen my son cry only twice in his entire adult life. That was the second time. Claire walked toward the door. I didn't stop her. There was no need. Daniel stood. It's over. She looked back. You'll regret this. Daniel shook his head. No. I regret believing you. She left. The wedding was canceled. But the story didn't end there. Daniel and Emma didn't magically become a family again. Trust doesn't return because the truth finally arrives. It has to be rebuilt, slowly, painfully. Months passed. Daniel moved into a small apartment. Emma didn't take him back immediately. He went to counseling. He admitted what he had done. He apologized to Emma, not once, many times. And he apologized to Noah for making him feel like he had to protect adults from each other. As for me, I kept the silver key. Not because it was valuable, because it reminded me that sometimes the smallest voice in the room is carrying the truth everyone else is too afraid to say. 1 year later, I was sitting at my kitchen table when Noah climbed into the chair beside me. He was 4 now. He looked at me and smiled. Grandpa? What? Mommy and Daddy are friends again. I smiled. They are. Are they getting married? I laughed. Noah, that's something they have to decide. He thought for a moment. Then he nodded seriously. Good. I asked him why. He looked at me like the answer was obvious. Because this time they should tell the truth. I looked out the window. For a long time, I had believed protecting my family meant keeping quiet. I thought peace meant avoiding difficult conversations. I was wrong. Sometimes silence protects the person causing the damage. Sometimes the truth hurts more than a lie. But at least the truth gives people a chance to heal. And every now and then, the person brave enough to speak it isn't the strongest person in the room. Sometimes it's a 3-year-old boy in a tiny navy suit, holding his grandfather's hand before a wedding that should never have happened.